What would you do if the man you loved reduced you to a housemaid while lavishing another woman with riches? Would you suffer in silence or rise and reclaim your power? This is not just a story, it is a lesson, a warning, and a truth too many women have lived through. Sit back, relax, and let me take you on a journey of heartbreak, revenge, and power. This is the story of Nkem, the wife who was thrown away like an old wrapper but rose like a queen. Nkem, a beautiful woman in her mid-30s, stood in her kitchen, carefully stirring the pot. Tonight was special. It was Valentine's Day, a day she always cherished, not because of gifts, but because it reminded her of the love she once shared with Obinna, her husband of 10 years. She had spent hours preparing his favorite meal. The dining table was set with crystal glasses, candlelight, and fresh roses, a picture-perfect setting for romance. But 9 p.m. passed, then 10, then 11. Still, no sign of Obinna. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. She dialed his number. The number you are trying to call is currently unavailable. Tears stung her eyes as she stared at the untouched food. How did they get here? How did love turn into loneliness? The next morning, the sound of Obinna's belt buckle clinking woke her up. He was already getting dressed, his back turned to her. "Good morning, my love," Nkem said softly, hoping for some warmth. "Morning," he muttered, not even looking at her. Her heart clenched. Was she invisible now? "I made breakfast, your favorite, pancakes and eggs," she said, forcing a smile. "I don't have time. I have an early meeting," he responded coldly. Her fingers curled into fists under the covers. There was always a meeting. Always an excuse. "Obinna, is something wrong with us?" she finally whispered. He paused, sighed, and ran a hand through his hair. "You're overthinking. Just focus on the house, all right?" And with that, he grabbed his briefcase and left. Later that afternoon, Nkem met her best friend, Edeora, at a cafe. "Nkem, this is not normal," Edeora said, setting down her cup. "He hasn't taken you out in months. No flowers, no 'I love you.' That's not marriage, that's a job." Nkem forced a laugh, though nothing was funny. "Maybe he's just stressed," she whispered. Edeora scoffed. "Stressed? Or occupied?" Nkem shook her head, unwilling to believe it. After the meeting with Edeora, she returns home. But that night, as she walked past Obinna's car, something caught her eye, the small, sleek perfume bottle under the seat. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up. It was a brand she recognized. A perfume she had once dreamed of owning. But Obinna had never bought it for her. The next morning, Obinna handed her a small, wrapped package. "Happy Valentine's Day," he said flatly. Her heart pounded as she tore it open. Inside was a broom. Tears blurred her vision. Meanwhile, that same evening on Instagram, she saw a video. Obinna's mistress, Ijoma, laughing as she received a brand new Jeep Wrangler. Her world crumbled. That night, Nkem did not sleep. She lay beside Obinna, her eyes wide open listening to his steady breathing, the sound of a man at peace while his wife's heart shattered into tiny pieces. She stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every insult disguised as indifference, every cold glance that told her she no longer mattered. But tonight, something inside her shifted. The pain was still there, but it was changing, hardening. She had spent years being loyal, obedient, and loving, and what had it given her? a broom. Meanwhile, Ijeoma, the other woman, was driving a luxury jeep. Nkem's fingers clenched. Enough was enough. She had spent too long waiting for love that had already left. Tomorrow, she would no longer be a victim. Tomorrow, she would begin her transformation. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Nkem was up. And, for the first time in years, she did not make breakfast. For the first time in years, she did not lay out Obinna's clothes. For the first time in years, she did not try to please a man who had long stopped seeing her. Instead, she took her wedding ring off. She stared at it, the symbol of a love that no longer existed, before placing it inside the bedside drawer. Then, she picked up her phone and made a call. Adora, I need a favor. There was a pause on the other end before Adora's voice came through, laced with curiosity and concern. You finally ready to listen? Yes. I'm done being a fool. Good, Adora said. Meet me at Winston Enterprises at 10 a.m. Nkem inhaled deeply, her new beginning had just begun. Winston Enterprises was one of the largest investment firms in the city. It was powerful, ruthless, and rich. And more importantly, it was hiring. As Nkem walked through the large glass doors, she felt out of place. Her knees were shaking, her palms sweaty, but she pushed forward. This was not her world, but it was about to be. She had spent years managing a home, balancing budgets, schedules, and crisis after crisis. If she could run a household, she could run a business. She met Manuel Winston, the company's CEO, a man known for his sharp instincts and lack of patience. Why do you think you deserve this job? He asked, leaning back in his chair. Nkem took a deep breath. Because I refuse to be overlooked anymore. Because I may not have experience in this field, but I have resilience. And I learn fast. And most of all, I have something to prove. There was silence. Then Manuel smirked. Good answer. You start on Monday. Nkem had just stepped into a new world. One where she was no longer just Obinna's wife. Meanwhile, Obinna sat in his office, unaware that the world around him was slowly falling apart. For years, he had controlled multiple businesses, but things had changed. Clients were withdrawing. Deals were collapsing. And worst of all, competitors were gaining ground. Sir, Winston Enterprises just secured the contract we were bidding for, his assistant informed him. Obinna's eyes narrowed. Winston Enterprises. That's impossible. They don't even work in that sector. But they did now. And he had no idea that his own wife had helped them get there. At the same time, Ijeoma sat on a luxurious hotel bed, scrolling through her phone with frustration. Obinna was not calling as often. The money was not flowing as fast. The gifts were not as grand. And Ijeoma was not a woman who waited. I don't date broke men, she murmured, reaching for her phone. It was time to find another wealthy fool. Weeks passed. Nkem transformed. She was no longer the woman who begged for attention. She was no longer the woman who sat at home waiting. She walked with confidence, her wardrobe sharper, her hair styled with precision, her aura commanding respect. And when she walked into events, heads turned. Even Manuel Winston, the ruthless CEO, had begun taking an interest in her. And that's when Obinna noticed. One evening, at a high-profile business event, Obinna saw her. She was standing beside Manuel, dressed in an elegant fitted gown, holding a glass of champagne, her head held high. For the first time in years, Obinna actually looked at her. And he didn't see a wife. He saw a woman he no longer recognized. A woman who had moved on. And for the first time in his life, he felt something sharp pierce his chest, regret. But it was too late. Because Nkem had already outgrown him. And he was about to learn the hardest lesson of his life. Obinna sat in his office, his fingers drumming on the mahogany desk. His business, once a giant in the industry, was now hanging by a thread. The deals he had taken for granted were slipping away, investors were pulling out, and the luxury lifestyle he had built for himself, an idioma, was starting to crack. Then, as if the gods had decided to make him suffer in broad daylight, he saw something on his phone that made his stomach drop. A headline. Winston Enterprises secures major multi-million naira deal, thanks to their newest executive, Nkem. His eyes widened. Nkem. His wife. The same woman he had ignored. The same woman he had reduced to nothing. No. This can't be real, he whispered, his heart pounding. But it was very real. His wife had risen. And worse. She was thriving without him. While Obinna sat in shock, trying to make sense of his collapsing world, Ijeoma was already miles ahead of him. She had noticed the signs. The declining bank alerts. The less frequent shopping sprees. The decrease in expensive dinners at five-star restaurants. And Ijeoma. She was not a woman who stayed in sinking ships. "Baby, we need to talk," she said one evening, twirling the diamond bracelet he had once bought her. Obinna sighed, rubbing his temples. "Not now, Ijeoma. I have too much on my plate." She crossed her arms, tilting her head. "That's exactly the problem. I don't think I want to be on your plate anymore." His head snapped up. "What are you saying?" She sighed dramatically. "I mean, let's be honest, Obinna. Things are different. The money, the lifestyle, it's not the same. And I didn't sign up for struggle love." Obinna's stomach twisted. "Are you serious right now?" he growled. She shrugged, picking up her Louis Vuitton handbag. "Look, I enjoyed the ride. But it looks like this car is running out of fuel. And me. I need a new driver." With that, she walked out. And for the first time in years, Obinna felt the sting of betrayal. While Obinna's world fell apart, Nkem's only got better. She was flourishing. Her confidence had grown, her wardrobe had transformed, and the once silent and overlooked woman had become a force to be reckoned with. And everyone noticed. At work, Manuel Winston himself had taken an interest in her. Not just professionally, but personally. "You have an impressive mind, Nkem," he told her after a high-profile meeting. "And an even more impressive resilience." She smiled, sipping her wine. "It's amazing what happens when you stop settling." Manuel leaned in slightly. "So tell me, Nkem, have you stopped settling completely?" Her heart pounded. Had she? Then came the moment no one expected. A high-profile charity gala, filled with the city's most powerful people. And in the midst of it all, standing tall and proud, was Nkem. Dressed in an elegant emerald gown, her hair swept into a sleek bun, she radiated power. And when Obinna walked in, struggling to keep up appearances, his breath caught. She was the most beautiful woman in the room. And for the first time in years, he realized what he had lost. He approached her, clearing his throat. Nkem. She turned, her eyes unreadable. Obinna. He swallowed hard, suddenly feeling like a fool standing in front of a queen. You look amazing. She smiled, sipping her champagne. I know. The confidence, the indifference, it was too much. Can we talk? He pleaded. She tilted her head. About us. She laughed softly, shaking her head. Oh, Obinna. There is no us. And just as she was about to walk away, Manuel Winston approached, placing a protective hand on her back. Ready to go, Nkem? She nodded. Absolutely. And as they walked away together, Obinna felt it. Regret. Pain. Loss. And he knew. He had thrown away gold for dust. With Ijoma gone, Nkem unreachable, and his business collapsing, Obinna was officially at rock bottom. His house was in foreclosure. His cars had been repossessed. His once loyal business partners had abandoned him. He was drowning. One night, desperate and broken, he did something he never thought he would do. He went to Nkem's house. And when she opened the door, dressed in a silk robe, her hair still damp from a shower, he almost broke down. Please, Nkem, he whispered. I messed up. I lost everything. But you were always my home. She tilted her head, amusement in her eyes. Oh. So now you remember home. He stepped forward, his voice desperate. Give me another chance. Let me fix this. She chuckled, shaking her head. Obinna, the funny thing is, you thought I was weak. You thought I would always be here, waiting for you. But let me tell you something. She stepped closer, her voice a whisper of steel. I don't go backward. Ever. With that, she closed the door. Right in his face. And as he stood there, staring at the closed door of the woman he had taken for granted, reality sank in. Nkem was gone. And she was never coming back. Obinna stood frozen outside Nkem's door, the weight of her final words crushing him. I don't go backward. Ever. The woman he had once discarded, the wife he had abandoned, had risen far beyond his reach. And now, he had nothing. His business was gone. His house was auctioned. His cars were taken. And Ijoma. She was now with a wealthy politician, enjoying a new luxury lifestyle, while he had only debts and regrets. He tried to call old friends, former colleagues, past investors, but the world had moved on without him. Nobody wanted to associate with a fallen man. And worst of all, the woman he had underestimated was now a rising star in the city. While Obinna drowned in regret, Nkem's life was flourishing. She was now a partner at Winston Enterprises, leading multi-million-dollar projects, rubbing shoulders with influential leaders, and, most importantly, fully in control of her own destiny. And Manuel Winston. He had been watching her closely. Nkem, he said one evening after a successful meeting, what if I told you I see something more in you? She raised an eyebrow. More. He leaned forward, his intense gaze never wavering. Not just a brilliant businesswoman, but a woman I admire, respect, and want by my side. Her breath caught. Was this real? After everything she had endured, was love knocking on her door again? And for the first time in years, she felt seen. Not as a wife struggling for attention. Not as a woman waiting for validation. But as a force to be reckoned with. Meanwhile, Obinna had reached his breaking point. With nothing left, he made a final, desperate decision. He would beg. Not for money. Not for his business. But for her. For Nkem. He waited outside her office, disheveled, broken, and defeated. When she finally stepped out, dressed in a sleek black suit, exuding power and grace, he swallowed hard. Nkem, please, he whispered. She tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Please what, Obinna? His voice cracked. Please, give me another chance. I was a fool. I was blind. But I see it now. You were always the one. I took you for granted. But I love you, Nkem. I love you. Silence. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes, pity. Nostalgia. A ghost of the past. Then, she smiled softly. I'm glad you finally see my worth, Obinna. Hope flashed in his eyes. But then, she stepped forward and whispered in his ear, words that shattered him completely. But I don't love you anymore. His chest tightened. Nkem, please. I can change. She stepped back, shaking her head. You had your chance. You threw me away like I was nothing. But now, I am everything. And I refuse to go back to a life where I was invisible. Obinna sank to his knees, tears pooling in his eyes. I lost everything. She exhaled deeply, then whispered her final words to him. No, Obinna. You lost me. And that was your biggest mistake. And with that, she walked away, leaving him to drown in the ruins of his own choices. My people, what did we learn today? Life is a cycle. What you sow, you shall reap. Obinna thought he was untouchable. He thought he could replace a good woman, neglect his home, and face no consequences. But the truth? No one is irreplaceable. No one is above karma. And Nkem. She teaches us the most important lesson of all, know your worth. Don't wait for someone to validate you. Don't wait for love that doesn't see you. Rise. Thrive. And walk away from anyone who does not value you. Because sometimes, the best revenge is simply living well. My people, this is where the story ends today, but life continues. What do you think about Nkem's decision? Did she do the right thing? Should she have forgiven Obinna? Or did he deserve every bit of his downfall? Drop your thoughts in the comment section. Let's talk about it. And my family, don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another mind-blowing story. More drama, more lessons, and more entertainment coming your way. Until next time, my people, stay wise, stay strong, and always remember, karma never forgets.